Hello, everybody. Welcome to the European Life Panel on Global Agenda and Social Work. This panel is a step in the consultation process for what will be the future global agenda. In this panel, we give you the opportunity to be part in the sharing the future for our social work profession. I hope this webinar is informative for you as we plan to share with you our experiences, responses, and the impact of social work profession. But also, I hope you'll be inspired to be engaged and find better tools for the future. I moderate this web panel with Theodora Dobre. Before I give Teodora the microphone to guide you how you can be active part in the process, I would like to say a few words about her. Theodora is the Honorary Secretary for IFSW Europe, and she's helping me to ensure the communication and provide support to our member organization and social workers in Europe. She's a social worker for 8 years, working with a young generation and empowering them to reach their potential, discover their gift and abilities, and make better life choices for them and for those around them. So, Teodora, I gave you the microphone to guide people through the communication webinar.
Thank you, Anna. Hello, everyone. And I want to say thank you for joining us on our conversation today on this panel. It is important for us to make you, the ones that are watching us live, part of our discussion also. So there is an opportunity to hear your proposals and challenges from social work and from more colleagues from Europe and from over the world that are watching us. The conference participants from any region can participate today in the panel by asking questions and providing their reflections on the new global agenda for social work. But for that to happen, you are invited to comment or ask questions on YouTube on the live video chat where you are watching us today. And towards the end of our conversation and our panel today, I will be the one selecting a couple of those questions and have them written to the guests and ask them kindly to answer them for you. So feel free to comment and question and send us questions, and I will be the one taking care of those. Anna, you have the microphone again.
Thank you very much, Teodora. I invited somebody to help us during the process, and I would like to introduce you Rosita Mclean. Few words about Rosita before opening her microphone. She's an amateur artist and student, and she didn't follow the mother step as she's studying engineering. Rosita was with us 10 years ago in Hong Kong when we approved the global agenda. She was there in the meeting and the conference, and then, being interesting for her, she also followed us, social workers, in our webinars and trainings, and she provided a lot of support in a very special way. She's live drawing in the webinars, helping people to focus on information. So I would like to give Rosita the possibility to tell us a little bit about what is she doing, and maybe you already show us a little bit, Rosita. The microphone is yours.
Hello, so I'm going to be helping to visualize some of the discussion that's going on today, and be doing that through different drawings, and how the discussion goes along, the drawing will change. I'm just trying to work out how to share my screen.
You have to share your screen. Maybe Mayaka is giving you the access to share the screen.
Okay.
Do you have the possibility at the moment?
No, not at the moment, but it's okay because there's not much right now anyway. So as the event goes on, there'll be much more to show.
Thank you very much, Rosita. During the process, I will invite you to show us the drawing process. Before we start with the panel, I also would like to inform you that today we have translation in Russian language. We have with us Tim and Marina. They will help us with the translation. Hello, Tim. Hello, Marina. We have a number of social workers in Russia, 500,000 following us. And they will have the possibility to hear this webinar in Russian. We will not hear the translation. We have also the possibility that a number of colleagues from Russia, they join us here in the webinar, as they cannot watch the YouTube at the moment. So welcome everybody. I will start this webinar with the panelists. We have with us a number of panelists, and I'm going to introduce you when I will give them the opportunity to open the microphone. And I have also the support from the IFSW Global. A team is with us. It's Mayaka and Pascal. Thank you very much, Mayaka and Pascal, for helping us during this webinar. We start now discussing the agenda, the global agenda. So I just wonder if Rory is with us, Rory Truel is with us. Rory it's here with us now, and I would like to say a few words. Rory represents the committee that is working in the global agenda connecting ideas and collecting ideas from all the region. So Rory, I would like to start with you. Your microphone is on, so we are listening.
Oh, thank you so much, Anna. It's a real pleasure to join your panel. I just need to comment that I'm not coming from a European perspective. I'm here as a global representative, and I'm really looking forward to, as we all are in IFSW, hearing Europe's voice in the global agenda process as we move forward. It's been an incredibly exciting conference, and I need to also announce that we have over 20,000 registrations now. So that's an extraordinary result. It's a result which shows the passion and the dedication to this process. I don't think we've ever had anywhere near this level of inclusiveness as we've gone through a process to identify and think and debate and discuss the global agenda themes as we want to move forward. So this is truly a historic moment and occasion, and it will strengthen our profession as now and as we move forward. There is a process happening behind the scenes in the conference, which is a committee that will help identify the next global agenda themes. And indeed, the global agenda consultation process for IFSW started 2 years ago, when we launched at the last conference in Dublin the consultation process. And since then, we've had contributions on our websites, we've had contributions from regional workshops, national discussions, and it is now in its finale, which is this global conference of 20,000 people. It's really exciting. And it's clear to the committee that's working behind the scenes, there is an enormous amount of commonality between people's concerns and the issues they want to see addressed in a global agenda that is forward-looking and acts as a call to action for everybody.
Thank you very much, Rory. I hope you stay with us all the webinar, because we would like to invite you also during the discussions. We start now thinking about where are we at the moment. We had 10 years a global agenda. We had great participation of our IFSW member organization in the process, and they could support all social workers across Europe to make from this global agenda a reality. So I would like to invite now John. John is the Vice President of IFSW, and together we are working to keep active and to support our member organization. John is in contact with a number of European networks and European Commission to ensure that the social pillar is becoming a reality for us in Europe. And the work he's doing is giving us the possibility that we can influence how social work profession is active in the social services. So John, I will give you now the microphone.
Thank you very much, Anna, for your kind words there. And good morning, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here today with you. So where are we today in IFSW Europe? I suppose in adhering to the principles of IFSW, principles of human rights and the promotion of social justice. Oh, by the way, if I'm going too fast, please stop me. So the promotion of social justice, our commitment here in IFSW Europe is to support people to have a better life and to advocate for the right to have that life. And our ethical principles speak about working towards transformational change and building inclusive and responsible societies rather than merely sticking plasters on want. So social work, I believe, is a political activity at many levels. And the IFSW in Europe, as elsewhere across the globe, is the expression of this activity at a macro level. And I think that's really important in terms of the work we do. So in this work, we are finding new ways to connect our efforts in IFSW Europe, our efforts at the national level. So now COVID-19 has changed the way we communicate with each other. Through our member organizations, we have been successfully offering webinars to social workers across Europe and beyond to learn from each other, to share our knowledge, our skills, and our experiences in these past weeks. We're hosting virtual meetings, and we have developed our website to provide information and ideas for our members. And this, in a way, has been a revelation in many respects. Before COVID, we would never have thought, I don't think, of doing this. But now we are able to reach out to many more of our members and social workers in Europe and elsewhere. So IFSW Europe strives to ensure that social work is valued and recognized for its efforts and abilities, particularly where the profession has low status in some countries. Some examples of this support: we've supported our member organization in Poland, fighting for better working conditions for social workers there. We've encouraged our member organizations to follow the lead of colleagues in the Netherlands and in Morocco, who have started a twinning project. And in the case of my own Irish association, the IFSW Europe has supported the work we have done with our colleagues in BASW UK around Brexit-related concerns for social workers and for the users of social work services. In IFSW Europe, we continue to forge links and build cooperation amongst our own member organizations, with other agencies, and with the European Union institutions. With our member organizations, we've started a project, as Anna alluded to there, 2 years ago, to work on the implementation of the European Union's European Pillar of Social Rights. And in this project, our focus has been particularly around social protection, access to social services, and adequate incomes for all. And this work is continuing. And we are working with the European Anti-Poverty Network and ATD Fourth World, for example, in fighting poverty across Europe. And some of our member organizations are involved in this work. And we hope to engage more member organizations and more social workers shortly in undertaking a project that we're preparing titled IFSW Europe Poverty Watch Report that looks at the impact of COVID-19 on people facing poverty. And this project is being coordinated by the European Anti-Poverty Network, and it ties in with the European Union's 2020 country-specific recommendations. Some of you may know of these. So we continue to build strong relationships, our visibility, and our profile with European agencies. For example, and Anna has alluded to some of this, the European Social Platform, the European Anti-Poverty Network that I've mentioned, the Council of Europe, the Fundamental Rights Alliance, and more laterally, the International Psychogeriatric Association, which is a global body. We also have a project in the planning stage to engage with younger social workers and newly qualified social workers to be involved in the region's activities. As it's been said by others this week, it's critical that we in the IFSW reach out to younger social workers to bring them into our work so that we renew our energy and our creativity, and to ensure in a way that we continue to be a relevant organization in the next 10 years. And I say that the older I get, the more I see the need for this. So IFSW Europe will continue to play a part in working also for the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. It's something that we probably should do a little bit more about in these coming years. But in particular, I think we will continue to engage in the work to build the IFSW policy on social work and these goals. And we must continue, above all, to strengthen our knowledge and skills to meet the challenges that we now face, particularly because of COVID-19. The pandemic has shown us that there should be no return to the ways we lived before. The old normal wasn't good enough. So thank you. I'll stop there for the moment. I know I have another bit to do later, but I'll stop now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. I will invite now Herbert. A few words about Herbert before I give him the microphone. Herbert is a former president of IFSW Europe. He's a social worker that is contributing to the development of social work professional and the development of social workers' response to the challenges. He's in close contact with social workers from all Europe, but with a focus on East European countries like Romania, Bulgaria, like Croatia. But he's also in active contact with social workers in Armenia and Azerbaijan, and it's providing a lot of support of the Association of Social Workers in Europe to be active and to engage. Herbert, I would like to invite you now. Your microphone is on.
Thank you, Anna. And thank you for the nice introduction. When I've been asked to think a little bit about the future role of social workers and social work, as usual, the history popped up in my mind, and I started to think back. In my first life, about 50 years, half a century ago, my dream was to become a musician, singer-songwriter, and some of the heroes of that time that I admired them because they were able to express everything I felt and I thought in just a few verses in their songs. And they became my heroes because of that. And I think this is what we also should try to become for our colleagues, to be able to express in a few sentences, in a paper, in few concise messages, what we as a profession, as a group of professionals are thinking and what we are demanding. This 50 years ago, I continue to remember, our society had almost collapsed, or it had collapsed a couple of years earlier after the Second World War. And there was a plan to rebuild it. And this was the so-called Marshall Plan. And this plan was only focusing on economic reconstruction. So a lot of money was put into the societies, into the countries affected by the war. And it was connected also with some values like democracy. So building up democracy was a condition to get money to build up the economy of these countries at that time. But it did not really work because, yes, we got democracy, fine. But we forgot about a lot of other values. And we were only focusing on consume, on profit, on benefits, and things like that. So the economy really became the priority of everything. So we are talking about the miracles after the war, the economic miracle in Germany of reconstruction and so on. But we forgot about a lot of other things in Europe, in Austria, in Germany, in other countries. Now we have a new crisis. We had 10 years ago the financial crisis, and now the crisis with Corona and COVID. And again, our societies are close to collapse, and especially Corona has shown us how vulnerable we are as society and how much we depend on this economic idea of this philosophy that everything is related to profit, to benefit, to labor, and to this system, to this structure. And again, the European Union now is discussing today, yesterday, to invest an enormous amount of 1,800 billion euro in building up the economy again. What about the values? How do we think about that? Do we build up the values, and which are the values in Europe we should focus on? And I think this is where the global agenda has to take a very specific and very important role. I think with the global agenda, we have a chance as a profession to introduce our values, to introduce the things that are important for us, for our societies, again, in parallel to this economic reconstruction. And the real crisis we are in, and that we have to focus on, is now the green social work, the environmental crisis, the climate change. This is where our values have to be combined with. They have to focus. When we talk about a livable future, we want to live in a planet that is still existing as a planet, as we know it, and not only in an economy. And I'm sure that we will have to face some conflicts in the future. This is what happened 50 years ago. Students and workers were on the street demonstrating. And I'm expecting a development again, because I think that our society now is full with disparities. The gaps are growing very fast, and social workers have to take their stand in this development. And we will not be able to avoid conflict. So this is what I would like to encourage my colleagues, the young generation of social workers, to be aware and to be prepared for entering conflicts and to stand. And I'm absolutely sure that we will support them, because this is the main responsibility of our associations, to support our colleagues in these coming conflicts. That's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Herbert. A lot of ideas to think about it and to consider them in our global agenda. I would like to move now to our next panelist. I will introduce two people now. It is my pleasure to introduce Siobhan. Siobhan has been a social worker for 30 years. She was the honorary secretary of IFSW, and since she was in contact with us and support our work all the time. She's based in England, and she's a practitioner and practice educator, writer, and trainer. I enjoy reading her books. Siobhan works mostly with students and nearly qualified social workers across UK, but not only. She's involving them from all over Europe, as in the last month she was organizing webinars with 400, 500, 800 participants from Europe and all over. And I would also like to introduce Omar. Omar is a social work student at the University of Birmingham in UK. Birmingham is the place where Europe should celebrate the 50 years of BASWA this year, but unfortunately we were not able to go there. A few words about Omar. He also had 19 years of lived experience with social work services, and used this experience to fuel his passion in becoming a social worker. Omar was invited here today by Siobhan to discuss the future of social work in the next 10 years. As he is a young social worker student today, he will be the future for our profession. And Omar was in contact with a lot of students in Europe to build his input today. So welcome Siobhan and welcome Omar. Siobhan, you have the microphone on.
Thank you, Anna. It's a great privilege to be here today to share with colleagues across Europe. I remember the excitement of being in Hong Kong 10 years ago when the agenda was launched. And across the last 10 years, the agenda has been very helpful to me in my work with students and with newly qualified workers. I think the agenda brought in new ideas for social work, particularly about environmental issues, which was new to me in terms of my work in social work. I think we definitely have a stronger voice now than we did 10 years ago when the agenda was launched. And looking at the 4 reports since the agenda launch, we now have some very strong evidence about what works, and that can help us to have a stronger voice in input into policy in the future. As part of my work with IFSW, I have seen some excellent social work across the region, and I have learned from social workers all over Europe about what good social work looks like. But still, we have increasing challenges within society. We've already heard Herbert and John talk about some of those. We have increasing poverty. So I'm very grateful for the project that John was talking about. We have, I think, increased inequality, and the recent Black Lives Matter movement has really demonstrated that very starkly for us. We have more challenges to human rights, and the environmental crisis continues to worsen. And with all of that, we have even more bureaucracy and even more red tape for social workers that I think takes practitioners away from where we want to be. Right now, we have the COVID-19 pandemic, and crisis always amplifies or exaggerates inequality. The pandemic has brought with it many challenges around the impact of poverty, around social distancing, but it also has brought with it opportunities. I have seen my local community connecting together more to support each other. The use of virtual spaces for social workers has been incredible in a really short space of time. I only met Omar. We have never met in person. We have only met in virtual spaces. We've worked together over the last 6 weeks to create a series of webinars, and our numbers attending have gone up and up and up, so that last week more than 800 people attended the webinar live. 20,000 people have registered for this virtual conference. This is the best IFSW conference that I have ever been to. So COVID-19 brings with it opportunities as well as challenges. We've heard some wonderful presentations from across the world in this conference. And I think in social work, there is much still for us to change, but there is a great deal that we can build on. And I have great hope for the future of social work and what the revised agenda, what the next agenda can do for us in the next 10 years. But a lot of the great hope that I have for social work, and hope is vital for all of us in social work, a lot of the great hope that I have comes from working with students and with newly qualified social workers like Omar. I started my presentation here talking about the excitement of Hong Kong. Omar was only 9 years old when the agenda was launched in Hong Kong, but Omar and his young colleagues are the future of social work. So I am really pleased that Omar has been able to join us today. He's spoken to social workers, as you said, Anna, or spoken to students all over Europe to find out what they wanted to bring into the panel today. And so I'm going to invite Omar now to talk. If you can put your microphone on, Omar.
Hi everyone. Firstly, thank you to both Siobhan and Anna for the lovely introductions. It is a great privilege to be here as a first year social work student, because I'm very early in my career. So it's definitely a great privilege to be here and be with social workers that have had more experience than I've actually been alive. So that's quite great. So yeah, as Siobhan said, I was only 9 years old when the global agenda launched in Hong Kong. But even then, I still had experience of social work as a child with a social worker. And I think it's important to reflect on this, because even when I was 9, which was 10 years ago, I think social work had a lot of challenges and a lot of difficulties and a lot of struggles. And I definitely did not have good experiences of social work. And I don't think much has changed over the 10 years. And I think a lot more does need to change. But I think the 4 pillars of the global agenda that we've had and the kind of reports and the research that has gone into that has had positive impacts. And I think they need to continue to have positive impacts, because when we think about social work in the next 10 years, there's still a lot that needs to change, and there's still a lot of space and opportunity for improvements and development. So I think my role here today really is because I do recognize that others here have a lot more to contribute about where we have been, because they've actually been practicing and they have the experience. And I'd like to save more of my time to talk about the future. And I think that's why I'm really here today, is to be a representative voice of social work students across Europe and to try and talk about the future of social work. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Omar. Thank you very much, Siobhan. I would like now to introduce David Jones. Yeah, to say something about David Jones that you don't know, as he's very active in the design of the global agenda. He's the mastermind behind the global agenda. And he's helping us all to be able to bring this agenda not only in Europe, as he was the coordinator, but all over the globe. David was the president of Europe. He was the president of IFSW Global. He was the person that support each of us in our work and help us to bring the values of social work profession in our practice. And he was visiting all the European countries, talking to social workers and helping social services. So David, I would like to give you the floor. The microphone is open.
Well, thank you, Anna, and thanks to the other panelists who have given us such a wide-ranging overview of the challenges facing us and the passion that we need to create change and some of the challenges that we face. I was not the mastermind of the global agenda. I was involved in steering it and building it over many years, and the report is there to be read, and there's an evaluation in the report which is now available free on the IFSW website. But we built this together as a network across all of our organizations. And in fact, the people who developed the pillars were working in Hong Kong behind the scenes, and I was just telling them that they had to do it. So, but it's been a really good opportunity. But I just want to say something about what the agenda is. You see, it's easy to have slogans. We can, all of us, develop things that we want to see change. But the real test of a profession is making it happen. That is the real challenge. And the agenda is supposed to help us not only identify what we are concerned about, but also how we get from here to there. And Herbert was talking about that in some ways. Part of the strategy is being on the streets, but the strategy is also influencing and shaping the global discourse, the global discussions that are going on, influencing United Nations, influencing speakers, helping to shape the dialogue across the world. And that is a big challenge. When we ask everybody to join us in this consultation, it's asking a lot from people, from people like Omar, who we were talking earlier, and people Siobhan is working with, to say, think how what you do in somebody's house or somebody's office connects to the big themes that the United Nations talk about or governments talk about. But that is our job, because what people do in their daily practice in social work is the real stuff. And we need to make sure that that experience and what people do and how, what we learn from what we do, how that influences and shapes what happens in the world. So when we're drafting the agenda, we need to think that it is not only about slogans, although they are important because we have to unify together, but it's also about strategy. And that means we have to think about who are we writing it for. We are writing it, of course, for ourselves and our networks, because that helps us come together and find common identity. But we also have to write it for others, for service users, for people who use services, because we cannot develop our ideas without being in partnership. So the language we use has to make sense to them. And we also have to talk to governments and the media and United Nations. And we know the United Nations is sympathetic, because in this conference, Paul Ladd has talked about the importance of social work to the SDGs. and Helen Clark, when she was in a very senior position, welcomed the global agenda and said that was important. So we have to find a language that speaks to these different people. But the purpose of all of this is what we've all been discussing, that we want to see a different world, a better world, a social world, and we want to find a way of getting there. And together we can do that. And it's good that over the last 10 years, we have been building that strength, which perhaps takes us on, Anna, to the next part of the sequence. So back to you.
Thank you very much, David. It's about how we see you in relationship with the global agenda. So you are our mastermind behind the global agenda. I would like to give the microphone to Rosita to see how are we doing progress with drawing. For Rosita, we need to share screen open, the microphone and the camera to be open in order that she's able to share with us. What is she doing? How is she collecting these ideas and put them together? Rosita, please.
So I'm hoping you can see my screen, is that right?
Yes, we see it.
Great. So I've just kind of tried to collate the different themes that have been discussed so far. So from the past, Hong Kong in 2010, obviously some of us were there, and like Omar and I were very young, but things have changed since then and moved on. And those 4 pillars that were outlined then, I've just written here, along with the different challenges that people have brought together for the present time. So the COVID-19 pandemic, which has resulted in these virtual conferences, but as has been mentioned, that's been great for engagement and reaching more members. As well as this, the poverty and economic crisis that's perhaps exaggerated by the current pandemic, as well as the conflict that's potentially due to come out of these kind of crises, as well as the Black Lives Matter movement and the inequality that has also been mentioned, and the environmental crisis, which continues to be on the global agenda and is in many people's minds at the moment. And then just here, I've done an arrow to the future, which is how we're going to react to these crises and how IFSW as an organization is able to make change and implement those changes.
Thank you very much, Rosita.
Thank you.
What a great way of drawing what is in our mind. Thank you very much. We look forward for the next parts of the drawing. We go now in a session for question and comments, and I will pass the microphone to Teodora to pick up some questions, and I will invite our panelists to open your microphone and to answer the question after Teodora is telling us, is giving us the text. So Teodora, the microphone is yours.
Okay, thank you. So one of the first questions that we received is related to the global agenda not being as known to the non-speaking English countries. For example, some countries like Scandinavia can also be involved and contribute, but in those countries, the majority of population do not speak the language. So the question is how we can better share that agenda or have the message sent out to the countries that are not speaking English as a first language, or the majority of people there do not speak English.
Thank you very much. I invite the panelists. John, please.
Sorry, yes. Thanks for that question. I think it's an issue of resources in terms of translation, and that's something that we probably do need to take into account. But and maybe we will take it up as in the next stage. How do we get the resource to actually put it into a translation version. However, there are many different languages, so that might be a big ask. But I think it's definitely an issue for people, for sure, and it's something that, excuse me, it's something that that we should discuss at our executive in Europe and globally.
Thank you very much, Aaron. David, would you like to say a few words?
The amazing thing is the World Social Work Day poster, which is produced by IFSW in a form that can be translated, is spontaneously translated into almost 100 different languages. Looking at Rory, he can nod his head if it was, but yes, thank you. It was more than 100 posts. And in a way, that is one of the strategies that a profession like social work, which does not have a lot of resources, we have to rely on some of that. So that's one thing. Secondly, it's now possible to translate on your screen automatically without even thinking about it in ways that 10 years ago in Hong Kong was just impossible. But of course, that means you have to have the money to be online. And that is a challenge, particularly in some of our countries. So we have to look at translations, and there have been many different things are translated, but I'm sure that documents that we also need to have short documents that can be easily translated. It's not only the big books, it's the short documents, and some of those are already translated.
Thank you very much, David. As it is a matter of engaging our member organizations in this work, I would like to invite also Rory to say something about this or to try to answer the question, please, Rory.
I think it's a fabulous question. I think that we do have a challenge in enabling all members with different languages to be able to engage in this process. But I think we're achieving it. We've got to remember that social work often works without resources. And when we launched this global agenda in 2010, we didn't have any extra resources, and many of us didn't have any resources in order to do it. And we relied very much, as David has said, on voluntary support from people in many countries. And 10 years is actually quite a short time for what we've achieved. We've grown this global agenda to the point where we have 20,000 people in this conference. The Global Agenda conference that launched in 2010, the Global Agenda had 3,000 people. So that's an enormous difference in this period of time. The Global Agenda in the first 10 years also helped shape and change the profession. We were able to focus on key ideas and key themes. We realized that social work needs to speak loudly and it needs to create greater visibility. Earlier, it was said that the UN have embraced social work as a consequence of the global agenda, and that is absolutely true. We've had many UN agencies see social workers as a really strategic partner. They have said they are aware that many of the UN agendas are top-down agendas. They work with the governments, and what they need from us, what they need from social workers, is to help support communities so that communities can have their voice in social development. And that is our role, and we've identified that through the global agenda process. So we've seen communities be able to take their voice to the Sustainable Development Goals, to the implementation of the Sustainable Goals as a consequence. So we've had lots of success and we've still got lots of challenges. And I think that this 20,000 person conference that we're having now will help grow that. We know people will continue to support the translation of documents, and it is an ongoing challenge. But it is a challenge, I think, that we're really meeting. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Rory. Teodora, we have a lot of comments and a lot of questions. Can you bring us another question, please?
Yes, firstly, I want to thank everybody for your kind comments. I'm trying to follow everything here. And we are encouraged by you being present with us. Another question that we have is addressed mainly to Herbert. Gabriel Stark is thanking Herbert for pointing out the economic history of Europe. And then she is asking that, of course, the importance of value is essential, but how does that work in the agenda for 2030?
Okay, thank you, Theo. Thank you, Gabriela, for the question in regards to Germany. I think that as a result of the ongoing crisis situation, we will face, or the next 10 years will be shaped by problems like poverty and inequalities, and much more than we want to imagine today. So the global agenda has to take into consideration this development. And as far as I know, there are already terms like livable future. I think it's important not only to talk about the livable future, but the livable future for all, for everybody. We are facing social exclusion. This is a problem that we were always confronted with. And I remember our IFSW projects from the years 1995, 96, 97 about social inclusion. And we have to remember, we know a lot of things from that time. We have experience, and we have to pick up some of the results from that time. And I remember Anna called David the mastermind. Actually, he's also a little bit the brain of IFSW, and he was the moderator of this project, social exclusion, inclusion in the 90s. So David, we have a lot of things, and I think together we will find the right strategies, the right demands, and the right slogans also to continue on this work. Yeah, that's for the moment. I think that there is another important term in the new global agenda for the next 10 years, and it's about connection and being connected. And I think this is the power we have. So as social workers, when we stand alone, we will fail. If when we stand together, we have a lot more power. And in the global agenda, we have to be aware, and we should point out that this is our role together for those who need us.
Thank you very much, Herbert. Thank you very much, Teodora. We will have another session of questions and answers. I would like to mention some of the comments you are having. In short, I'm going to your comments to see. I really enjoy reading it. I would like to say that Silvana, the president of IFSW Global, is with us, and she's sending greetings to European region and wishes to all of us. Thank you very much, Silvana. And also Anna Rurka, the president of INGO, Council of Europe, is sending us regards. So thank you very much. We are moving now, and we get regards and comments from all over the world. So we don't have only Europe here. Thank you, all of you. Now we are moving to the future of global agenda. How do you see the future? And with this, we will start, of course, with those who should implement the agenda. So Siobhan and Omar, I would like to start with you.
Okay, thank you, Anna. So Omar, we said earlier that I have been a social worker for longer than you've been alive, but you have so much to bring to social work, and I have so much hope working with so many fabulous students and newly qualified workers about the future. But you've spoken to many new social workers and students. So tell me about your vision for social work in the next 10 years.
Yeah, thank you, Siobhan. Yeah, firstly, what I'll do is I'll kind of talk about my personal vision, bringing up my own experiences and what I want to personally see as the vision for social work profession in the next 10 years. And then I'll kind of move on to more points later about what other students have brought up. But firstly, so my vision for the social work profession is to be a profession that can be viewed in a more positive light. And I feel like the power to control this narrative needs to be empowered to the people we work with, to our service users, our clients. I feel like they need to be empowered to kind of control that narrative. I want service users to be able to voluntarily ask for social work support, and this to not be a negative thing. You know, no person should feel scared of social workers, but that is the case a lot of the time. That was the case with me in my experiences. And I want to see more positive stories of social work. I want to see how meaningful changes are being made to meet collaborative goals. And all of this kind of contributes to the idea of solidarity and being connected with the people we work with. As I believe that without solidarity and without being meaningful with the people that we're working with, if they're not happy, you know, because, you know, our kind of role as social workers is to be kind of advocates for the people that we're working with. So that relationship needs to be meaningful. And I do think a way forward for that is professional associations like the Federation. They need to connect more with people with lived experiences. And this again contributes to the idea of solidarity. And I want to see more service users being involved in the curriculum, teaching and planning and social work education internationally, I think.
I think that's a really interesting point, Omar, that you made, because as David said earlier, we need to think the agenda can't just be about words, it's also about how do we get to that point. And so you've given some suggestions also about how we get to that point. But as Herbert said as well, then a theme for the global agenda, the next global agenda, very much from our perspective, can be about connections. And you've mentioned connections there. You've talked already about promoting connections between social workers and professional associations and the people that social work supports. You've also talked there about connecting the agenda with the curriculum for social work students. So how we can connect the agenda with the curriculum and connect people. And we know, don't we, from the global agenda that we've had, that relationships are at the heart of social work, and connections is also about relationships, because it's about how we connect together to create those relationships. So those connection themes are very important. I know though also that you've thought about how do we connect policy and practice, haven't you? And a lot of workers have talked to you about those connections, connection of policy and practice. What other things have people been raising with you when you've spoken to them?
Yeah, I think what social work students want to see more of is, I think, the idea of relationships, but more interconnectedness between social work students internationally, kind of establishing links with projects internationally, more opportunities to kind of study abroad and things like that. And kind of, I think social media and what's happened with COVID is kind of given more opportunities, because with our webinars we've been hosting, it's reached an international audience, and that has given us links. Like we've been talking to social work students from Iraq and having meetings with them. And I think there needs to be more of that kind of interconnectedness with social work students. And I think the social work profession just needs to it needs to be more global, I think. And so an example of that is my colleague Diana Katoto, who's also a student at the University of Birmingham. In her recent blog, she's argued that social workers in the UK have been quiet around the Black Lives Matter social movement. And I think the social movement that's happening predominantly in the US and the American regions, I feel like in the UK, and she touches on this in her blog, that the voice in the United Kingdom is not loud enough. It's very silent. And I think that something that we need to be doing is keeping this interconnectedness, learning from our colleagues in the American regions in order to combat institutional racism and kind of support the Black Lives Matter movement to, combat the other global pandemic that is racism. So more connectedness in relationships.
And I think as well, haven't you, you've been telling me almost daily, you've been contacting me on WhatsApp to tell me what you're learning from this conference. And this is, I think, given an exciting opportunity. Had this conference been in Canada, Omar, you would not have been able to attend, and we would not have had 20,000 people come together. So that connection has been created because of it being in a virtual space. So we've been able to draw on aspects of the challenges of COVID to help us to think about connections. But I know that the other theme that we have talked about that you and I saw together, suggested by Rory, who is with us today, and Rose Henderson, in the reflections about the next global agenda. One of the things that jumped out to us from that paper was livable futures. And that was very much something that you and I wanted to see. I think that also connects into Black Lives Matter, because it is about life and living, but also brings in some of the environmental issues that, for me, were introduced to me in terms of social work by the agenda. Also addressing food insecurity, which I know has been a big issue that students have shared with you in the consultations you've had. Is there anything else that you see that connects to that livable futures theme that we are interested in?
Yeah, I think poverty as an international pandemic it's been happening for centuries, and it continues to happen today. I think poverty has been intensified by COVID-19, and I think that in itself is something very concerning and something very damaging to the people that we're working with, and, you know, service users. And I think social workers, they kind of need to, through professional associations, need to have a stronger voice in the policy making arena and kind of be change makers in policy to kind of combat poverty using a macro approach. I was listening to a keynote earlier from Dr. Miyuan Gui from I think Zambia, and she raised a number of important issues, such as the lack of social work as change makers in policy, the lack of social justice, and the lack of social change. And I feel like a global agenda theme that kind of addresses all of this is the idea of kind of promoting and enabling livable futures, and taking that in a macro approach and kind of supporting service users systematically, kind of thing.
Something that really interests me about that, Omar, is to think back to my early career, and it's very England based, I know, but when I first started as a social worker, one of the things we were trying to do was get people out of institutions into their communities, so that people had life chances and could live alongside of everybody else in their community. And I suppose, to me, that brings those two themes together, because it's about connecting people with their communities, but giving them livable futures. So moving away from institutional care towards promoting life chances, challenging poverty, promoting human rights. All of those things, I think, are key in terms of that livable futures. And so I would very much like to thank Rory for putting that into the reflections on the new global agenda, because it really captured my thinking around. I also think it's important for us to recognise that social work is about life and death. And especially because we're in the middle of a global pandemic at the moment, and there is so much around about inequality, creation of lives ending because of this pandemic. And I think sometimes we're not always promoted as a profession of life and death, of that crucial nature of our work. And yet that is what we do. So to me, that livable futures is really important. Is there anything else that has been shared with you, Omar, that you want to bring up in the panel today that we haven't talked about in this conversation?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I had shared with me is the whole of the social work curriculum. And I know this is different internationally, but especially in the UK, there's a lot of thoughts around that the social work education on qualifying programs, it needs to be decolonized. There needs to be decolonization of the social work education. There needs to be more teaching on diversity, anti-oppression, anti-discrimination, inequality that happens internationally. I think something that happens a lot in social work education is the lack of understanding of intersectionality, because a lot of like the teaching is kind of, they lump all ethnic minorities together, you know, in one kind of lecture on racism, but it doesn't explore the intersectionality of this. And because anti-oppression is an international problem that's happening, I do think that there needs to be more time spent kind of exploring all of this and kind of exploring the wide range of, being anti-discriminatory in your practice. Something that also came up was that we kind of need more research and funding and like grants and opportunities given to social work academics from especially Black, but also ethnic minority communities, and researching taboo subjects that happen more commonly in some countries, but it happens internationally, such as like grooming, honor-based violence, sexual and domestic abuse in ethnic minority communities, to kind of create that greater understanding, that level of competence and awareness, because it does happen differently in different kind of regions, and we do need that wide understanding of how all of that kind of intersects and happens. And then also talking about more promotion and opportunities of diversity, especially in social work leadership. And I think that organizations give that platform to make real systemic and global changes to meet the needs of oppressed groups. I think something about the leaders not being diverse, and if they're not diverse, they're not exactly representative of these oppressed groups. So therefore, the proposition, the actions, the changes will not be meaningful. So I feel like the more we include diversity and representation, the more, for example, even the global agenda, the more that will actually have a meaningful impact to people who are oppressed.
I think that's a really important point, Omar, and maybe the one where we could hand back over to Anna at this stage. But I think being able to see yourself in something is very important. And so I think that's a part of Livable Futures, that everybody needs to see themselves represented in the social work profession and in leadership. And I think that final point about the curriculum, obviously you're a student, you're right at the beginning of your social work journey here. And so the curriculum is really important to you and the people that you've spoken to. And sometimes I think students feel, and newly qualified workers feel, that there's a gap between what they're learning and what is happening in practice. And I know that that's something that IFSW and the Education Commission have explored. And I think that's a really important point. But I think it's that bit about, again, connecting social workers and practice with the curriculum. In some areas, certainly in our country, the curriculum can be driven by politicians rather than by the profession. And so the global agenda can help us to make sure that our curriculum and our future is guided by our profession. Thank you very much for bringing those things to the panel, Omar. I'm privileged to have shared this opportunity with you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Anna. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What a great input, Omar and Siobhan. I would like now to move on to our speakers. Herbert, I move on to you.
Okay, thank you, Anna. I'm a little bit stuck with the word connection. When I started as a practitioner 44 years ago, we didn't have mobile phones, we didn't have internet. We still felt quite connected. So I think that the development of the technical development has given us a lot of opportunities. And for me, the question is how to use them, because what's absolutely visible and yeah, almost the first thing I think about is control. So all of these technologies more or less lead to more control, and usually a lot of the parts of society which are target groups, beneficiaries of social work, are those who are more controlled than others. So I think we should simply start to think about and to see it as a challenge. I'm still absolutely in favor that we have to build the global agenda for the next 10 years also around this term connection and connectivity, and yeah, staying connected, because it also means access to resources, access to opportunities, access to knowledge, to expertise and experience. But maybe when we talk about this lack of protection of privacy, we should also discuss a little bit about maybe a new definition or a new understanding of fundamental rights. The more we are connected with each other, the more we should have basic rights to protect our privacy and our own decisions, because as social workers, we support the decisions of our clients. We don't decide instead of them normally. This is my understanding. So if we think in this way, maybe some new fundamental rights are important for describing or entering this term connection in our next strategy. That's one comment. I have some more, but maybe later if there is enough time.
Thank you very much, Herbert. And I move now to John.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you, colleagues, for your inputs. So I think I'll just say some words based on the fact that I'm the Vice President for Europe, for IFSW Europe, and I do think we're doing quite a lot of work in these last years, and that's an ongoing. There are ongoing projects. So I think in our new agenda that will pick up. The new agenda will pick up this work. And I think the context, and people have talked about the context for the future, what is going on. The COVID-19 started out as a health problem, now a health crisis. Now it's a social, political and economic crisis. Yes. And it's going to be with us for many years to come, probably. So all our strategies and our work will have to take that into effect. Now, one of the good sides is, as we've all said, I think, is that we are able to connect virtually, well, at least most of us, in greater numbers. There is an issue, obviously, and I think David alluded to it, around people's access to technology, and that's something we need to think about. I think the context also, we're living in turbulent times, never mind COVID. So I think democracy is challenged now because of austerity and now the loss of trust in politicians. And somebody the other day, one of the keynote speakers talked about this and said it gives rise to anger and conflicts. Herbert mentioned conflicts, and I think the speaker is right, as is Herbert. We've talked a lot about poverty, and it's interesting that the European Union's Europe 2020 strategy was supposed to take 20 million people out of poverty. However, poverty has actually increased in those 10 years of the strategy. So we're worse off than we were in some respects. And as people have said, COVID-19 has exacerbated that. Discrimination has increased. Yesterday, we heard that in the panel yesterday that ethical dilemmas for social workers have been exacerbated. So one of the things, though, that again, I've heard during the conferences, as social workers, we're at the front line. We're working with those who are vulnerable, who are put aside, who are discriminated against because of factors. And I'll just list out these things because it struck me. Poverty, ill health, disability, migration, race, gender, creed, or violence, be they adults or children. And I'm mentioning that long list particularly because our work in these areas and with people who are in these positions who are vulnerable gives us rich raw data and experiences to present in advocating for change in both policy and legislation. And I do think it's something that we had talked about in the last years of of IFSW, and it is something that we should try and harness this richness in developing and implementing our agenda. As we drill down into the global agenda, how do we actually harness that richness? What ways do we do it? And maybe the virtual space that Omar has spoken about and the connectedness will help that. I also think in terms of words, the pandemic has shown that collective and cooperative approaches are the best way to successfully fight the virus. But these approaches can also be most effective in working in IFSW Europe. For example, our work that I've mentioned with other civil society agencies. The other thing, I'll stop after this, I think, but the other thing I think we need to look at is to look at our structures and our processes to meet these challenges. For example, I think we probably should have, I don't like using this word metrics, it seems very sort of financial and economical and whatever, but that we use some measures to review our progress in the next years. So what does success look like? And how will we know we're achieving our goals? And David has mentioned that the agenda is beyond the slogans. So it's when we drill down into the meaning of those slogans, how do we know and how will we know what's in place to actually say, yes, we're getting there. And I think we will get there. I'm absolutely convinced we will, but it's to be able to show the real worth. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. I will move now to David.
Thank you, Anna. Obviously, our time is pressing now and we want to take some questions in. So reflecting on where we go, I think as I've been listening, the challenge to us to be clearer about how we demonstrate that we are making a difference is a very, very real one. And I think we have, if you like, we have matured, we have learnt through the first decade, and now we're in the second decade. I saw a comment from Ruth Allen in the chat from UK saying, how do we build strategies together? How do our national associations in our network of Federation of Social Workers, how do we agree some strategies for making the changes? Because let us be in no doubt that we face a huge challenge over the next decade. Herbert talked about conflict. In many ways, I am very frightened. The world has leaders who are interested in building walls and dividing us, who appeal to nationalist or sectional interests, who are racist, who are, as we've seen in some European countries in this last week, don't wish to respect people's sexual identity. All of these things are coming back powerfully. And that is why it is very important for us to think strategically. If we look across the world, there are developments in Hong Kong, there are things happening in India, there are challenges in so many countries. And social workers are vulnerable at that time. We have to remember, when we say things strongly, somebody somewhere may go to prison because of it. And somebody in Hong Kong is in prison because of their commitment to standing with young people and their rights. So let us be in no doubt that this is more than slogans. This is indeed about life and death and liberty. And we have to be responsible about our slogans, clear about our strategies, and very, as Herbert rightly said, look back to fundamental rights and think about some of those elements. But this is a time for us to be strong. Yes, it's a time to be optimistic, but it's a time to be realistic and to recognize this. And the global agenda for the last 10 years has been saying, unless we do something about the growing inequality, our world faces real problems. And we have been saying that clearly and loudly in many places. So having a strategy is really important. I'm handing over the global agenda coordination to my colleague Abby Tassi, who I see has been joining in the chat. He's extremely experienced, has been involved in this for a long time, and is very committed to making these partnerships work and making sure that we work together with all these different interests in this dangerous time for the world, that social work is clear about where we stand, what is important, but more importantly, how we make a difference. And that is our challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. I will move now to Rory. Rory, your microphone is on.
Okay, thank you so much. I think the starting question was, what is the future of the global agenda? And I've been chatting in the background with IFSW President Silvana Martinez, and we were commenting that we feel that the future is safe when we see Omar as a student taking forward such a thoughtful and considered position and analysis of the issues and concerns we have to raise. And if the next generation of social workers have this analysis, have this perspective, and have this will and passion to make a difference, the future of the global agenda is in safe hands. So that's my opening comment. I've heard, as a member of the committee, looking at the themes that we will be announcing at the end of this conference. We hear Europe talking about all of these issues. We hear them talking about livable futures. We hear about connection. We hear about the range of issues that have been said. One of the things I think is that we will have a positive and strong future as a profession, because what's happened in this crisis with COVID-19 is that the profession has acted quickly. We knew what to do from the very beginning. We were alerted by our member in China that this is the way that they were managing it in February. And they shared that information with their global family. And we were able to share that information across all of our members and create a dialogue and discussion. So as the virus spread, social work was ahead of the governments. We knew there would have to be physical distancing. We changed our World Social Work Day poster. We advocated in every country, that there must be a social response in a connection with a medical response. We won those fights. Social workers went to their ministers and they argued and they won those fights. We won them, and then the government started to speak to each other and learn from the experience that social workers brought to them. This is a really, really powerful demonstration of what we can do and what we can achieve. We've had some keynote speakers make some really, really important points for our thinking about the global agenda. I very much agree with Herbert and other people that have said that we do have an economic crisis ahead. Paul Ladd, the director of the United Nations Research Institute for Social Development, had a recommendation for social work. He said, in this coming economic crisis, we need to build social protection systems. The countries that don't have them need them, not just to support the people who are going to be affected by poverty, but to also support the economy. Because when social protection systems are in place, the economy can grow. Because more people can contribute to work, more people go to school, less crime in the community as a consequence of strong social protection systems. He said that the middle income countries will also face a major crisis because their social protection systems are not prepared. And he called, as a UN representative on social workers, to be advocating for the strength of those social protection systems. And then we can see in the conference, so many people are ready to do this. We were able to do it with COVID-19, and we will be able to do it again. And that is our role and our responsibility as this profession to advocate and make those changes occur. We also learned from Victor Paul from India that social workers can't do it alone. We have to do it in partnership. It is our responsibility, but it is also our responsibility to do it in partnership. He provided some wonderful demonstrations of social transformation in the context of poverty in India, where communities were able to elect their own self-development committees and lead their way out of poverty and marginalization. So we have the tools. We can learn from one another, and we will keep learning from one another through this profession, through our connection, through our family. And the last keynote speaker I want to talk about was Haneen from Jerusalem. Haneen said, let's be clear, social work is essential. Social work is an essential profession. We've in some countries had to argue that, and through COVID-19, many governments have accepted now that social work is essential. That is not for all governments and all countries, but that is a message that is really important to our profession as we move forward. So I think we do have big crises to meet, and I think the profession is ready to meet them.
Thank you so much, Rory, for your input. Let's see how we stay with the drawing, because people really love this visual part of the drawing. So let's see, Rosie, are you prepared to show us the screen? Thank you very much. You have the microphone on.
Thank you. So this is what I've gathered together from everyone's vision of the future. So obviously lots of great points there, different things to consider. I've tried to draw the kind of different connections that were brought up, forming relationships, connecting policy and practice, our new connections with our use of tech and how people access this, how our processes, structures, and our organizations connect. And then in terms of livable futures for everyone, with the current amplification of poverty and inequality, it's really important that that idea of livable futures is brought into our mindset and the way that we continue to work.
Thank you so much, Rosita. Thank you very much. I will give you some more space at the end of the meeting. Now I would like to move to Teodora for questions. Teodora?
Yes, thank you again for all the comments that we are receiving from you. It's been, we can see that we are live and you're interacting with us, and that's exciting for us. So thank you for engaging in the conversation. Unfortunately, there is not enough time to take all your questions. We take questions from YouTube live chat now and from this Zoom group chat, and also from Facebook. So we have different platforms, and I'm trying to work between those and select the questions. Please note that the ones that we cannot reach out today, we will surely include them in our further conversations because they are valuable to us, and we want to make them part of our discussion on the global agenda topic. The next question for today is related to the skills of social workers. So a skilled social worker is the main driver to success. Which educational techniques, services will be applied to the future in order to increase their skills? This is the question.
Thank you very much, Teodora. I'm looking to the panelists. Herbert, would you like to answer? Yes, please.
Okay, very short comment. First of all, I don't know how, but what I would like to say is, I think in the curriculum, we have to focus first on the why. Why do we have to learn this, and why are we learning skills? And then we can discuss about how we are doing something. So for me, it's important why we intervene, why we make actions, activities as social workers. And the second step is the how, and I'm sure we will find experts also from other professions who will give us the necessary knowledge after we know why.
Thank you very much. I see Siobhan giving me a sign that she also would like to take the question. Please, Siobhan.
I was agreeing with
some comments, please.
I was just agreeing with Herbert about the vital importance of the why, because why is at the center of everything we do as social workers. But in response to the question, I was thinking about the fact that I think one thing that would be very good as an educational technique to improve skills of social workers is that we begin to connect experienced social workers with new social workers much more closely, so that there's improved mentoring arrangements can happen in education. I have learned as much from Omar as he learns from me. I think we can, when we join experienced workers and new workers together, that really enhances skills and learning. So it was just a thought from me.
Thank you very much. I wonder if at the end of this, if we would be able to take a second question. Teodora, is there another question that we can take?
Just a moment, because I had one prepared here. Okay, so it is related. Just a second, because I'm navigating to different platforms, so it's gonna take a while for me to find the question. Okay, so the question is, will the next global agenda come forward with more of a framework for how associations or students students can progress its aims tangibly in broader socioeconomic and other policies and practice, and with partners and allies? I can repeat it if it was not clear.
Thank you very much, Teodora. I think it's very challenging as we open the possibility that people are writing us. We also have our colleagues from Russia here in the Zoom with us. And we also have the possibility that you can take questions also from Facebook and other accounts. So thank you very much, Theodora. Before our panelists are thinking about giving us an answer, can I see some drawing also from Rosie? She informed me that she did some progress. So Rosie, can you turn your screen and show us?
Yes, I actually don't have very much progress, so I don't know whether you want to pass on to someone else.
Thank you very much. I think I see the comments and your answers somehow far in the comments. John, would you like to take the floor now?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Anna, and thank you for the question. I think what we can do is go back to our project, the proposed project that we have in IFSW Europe to engage with newly qualified social workers, young social workers. COVID-19 sort of interrupted it somewhat, but I think it would be a very good framework in which to address some of the issues that have come up. So yeah, I would be absolutely in favor of doing that, and hopefully we will do it in the next month.
John, thank you very much, John. I would like to give the last word in this webinar to Omar, because he is the generation that is going to implement this agenda. So Omar, I would like to give you the microphone for the last intervention in this webinar.
Thank you, Anna. Really quickly, just like a concluding point, I just wanted to say that there are a variety of social injustices and difficulties happening internationally, but I feel like social work is in an amazing, a great position to kind of take collective action and connect and come together with the people we work with to kind of create those changes, to kind of create livable futures. I just think that's, I just want to kind of emphasize that social work is in that powerful, privileged position to connect and just create livable futures.
Thank you very much, Omar. Also about the young generation thinking, can you tell us a little bit, Siobhan, if there is anything to add for what we prepare for them to implement?
There was just a point that I wanted to add that is something that Omar and I and the group of students and new workers that we work with have taken on as a message. And it follows on from something that David and Rory have both said. David and Rory have talked about making the difference. And Omar and I and another group have taken on the phrase, rather than make the difference, we have taken the phrase be the difference. And that phrase has come to us from a care experienced artist who is also a foster carer. And he's an artist. He does a lot of artwork that he wants to share with social workers about what they should do. So I think Rosie does have now, if she's got it available, a piece of Paul Yusuf McCormack's artwork that calls us all to be the difference. And he asks all of us as social workers, can you be the difference? So this comes from someone who grew up in care in the 1960s and 1970s, but now engages very, very effectively with social workers, working with myself, with students and new social workers, encouraging them to be the difference. And I think if we can make the global agenda for the next 10 years, not to make a difference, but to be the difference. And I'd like to just say that on behalf of Paul Yusuf McCormack and Omar and the students that we work with. So.
Thank you very much, Siobhan. And with this, we are closing our webinar today. I wonder, Rory, do you think you can take something from the webinar from Europe for the next global agenda in the discussion? Is there something that you can collect from our webinar?
Well, the webinar has been recorded and all of the comments have been recorded as well. And they are definitely fed into the process for setting the IFSW Global Agenda things. And we hope that you are able to see them and reflect on them and see yourself, see your voice, whether you're a social worker, a person with lived experience, a partner to social work. We hope that you'll be able to see them, and we hope that you'll be able to see the eloquent words that someone from CARE just presented in this panel through Siobhan, which is be the difference. Last comment, I want to say the global agenda does not belong to any one person or any one committee or any one organization. The global agenda belongs to all of us. We are all a part of it, and we can all be the difference. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rory. I would like now to thank you all. I would like to thank the audience for bringing comments, experiences, and for sending us the questions. I would like to thank you so much, Herbert, David, John, for being with us. I would like to thank you so much, Siobhan, for bringing us Omar in this webinar. Omar, thank you. Your input and your generation input gave us hope today. And it's so good to see that you'll be the one that will contribute to this global agenda and to our profession. John, thank you very much for your support during the meeting. Teodora, it was good to have all this input, and your help during the meeting was valuable. Thank you so much. I hope, Rory, that being with us will inspire you from Europe. And I would like to thank two people that I could see here in the webinar being with us all along. It's about Tim and Maria and Katarina. Thank you so much for ensuring the translation. Tim and Marina was translating all the time during our webinar. And for with this support, a lot of our colleagues from Russia could be part of the meeting, and we are so happy for having you all. We could not visit you this year, even you celebrate the Day of Social Work, and we could be with you on the webinar, but this time you were able to join our conference. So thank you, all of you. It was really a pleasure to be this time with you. I wish you health, I wish you energy, and thank you to all social workers for being this time close to the people they need support. All the best to our conference till the end.